And welcome to Destination Unknown. I'm Bill DeFoi, and my lovely co-host, Michelle Hubbard, joins us. We've got our GPS out, and Michelle, good afternoon to you.
Well, good afternoon. Happy day before St. Patrick's Day.
Oh, yes, that's right. Tomorrow, as we are taping this, is the day before St. Patty's Day.
It is? Oh, that was a good Irish brogue.
How about
Bit
that?
of a one, yeah. Yeah, I'm going to say happy birthday to my friend Patty Wright, who is Irish, and tomorrow's her birthday.
Oh my gosh, what a way.
Yeah.
Everybody stops and has corned beef and cabbage in her honor.
Oh, how fun. See there, Patty.
So what is on our roadmap for today as we launch into Destinations Unknown?
Well, I thought we'd talk today about what Gay Hendricks calls the sweaty 5-minute conversation. And it's that conversation that is at the base of maybe some fears that are kind of going on in your life. And the way to kind of navigate this conversation is through integrity. So we're looking at those letters of lift, fear and integrity, and exploring how to approach this conversation that can really just clear up an awful lot of energy and release once it's done.
So when we talk about sweaty conversations, we're not talking about having a conversation after a workout at the gym then.
Well, maybe it is.
It may be, but...
Do you want to fire your trainer?
I don't know, but I don't have a trainer to fire, so... Anyway, what is a sweaty conversation?
Well, it could be, for example, something that's of a more personal nature along the lines of it's time for us to talk about getting a divorce. Or it could be the sweaty kind of a conversation of a personal nature where you tell someone, this is no longer how I want to be treated by you. Are you willing to treat me this way? And then I'm finding, too, there are professional types of sweaty conversations where right now I'm working with several clients who are doing the, I believe it's called multi-level marketing. Okay. And so, they're wanting to build a team, plus they have a product they're talking to people about. And they don't want to appear salesy. And so how to have this kind of a conversation is something that's, maybe getting caught in their throat, literally. So it's this kind of a conversation that you're avoiding and making yourself more scared about, and in the meantime, it's kind of churning you up on the inside.
So it can take on a number of facets. It could be somewhat conversational, adversarial, or perhaps even just being nervous.
Fear is a big part of it, and that's why I thought maybe we could kick it around today and share some ways to approach it that will at least allow it to just be done and you to go back to being fully present as who and what you are in that moment.
So you talked about two of the letters from LIFT, integrity and facing your fears. Mm-hmm. So let's talk about the part that has to do with integrity.
Right, and that is... First of all, land on, do you really even want to have this conversation? Is the fear that you're feeling telling you, you know what, maybe this isn't something that really needs to be said? If it's telling you, yes, it's something that needs to be said, but I feel scared, make that sort of a distinction so then that way you do want to have it. And then kind of segue into, now how can I make having this conversation a little bit easier for me? I can't tell you how many times I wish I have had someone just sitting by me holding my hand when I'm making a tech support call. That absolutely terrifies me. I don't understand what they're saying. So if this is a kind of a conversation, maybe you're going to have it over the phone, can you have a buddy there just sitting with you as you're making it that is just kind of, even if energetically, supporting you, holding you? Or would you maybe like to start working as a team? A lot of salespeople buddy up, and one of them is more the talker and one of them is more the paper person. Would it help you to have someone actually be with you in person having conversations? Is there some way that you can support yourself? I've started doing this just to hold my own hand sometimes. Look at how can you support yourself to help you, even though you're going to be scared. That's what makes them sweaty conversations. There's an element of big about them, but how can you be supported as you're making it?
When you talk about making a tech call to whatever agency or company that you're going to be dealing with, is it something for yourself where you feel like, okay, I'm talking to an expert and I'm not quite sure if I'm going to understand everything he or she says because I'm not that tech savvy?
It's that, and it's also that I'm very reliant on technology. That's how I do a huge portion of my business, and I know nothing about it, and I have even less interest in it. So I attach all of this importance to this conversation because it's, my lifeline to my business, my way of being me in the world in a big way. And so if I don't get it, if I don't understand it, if whoever's on the other line doesn't help me to have this instrument for putting my voice out there, then I feel like a huge big thing is taken away from me. So I attach a lot of importance to it, and then I beat myself up for not knowing how to fix it myself.
And with that, do you feel like after you've had a conversation with one of these tech groups that the fear was not as great as you had expected it to be?
I can see ways that I've created really emotional, big, untrue stories around it. And that's where it really helps and to be able to see the difference between I feel scared and this is what reality is.
Well, fear, as we've talked about before, is false expectations appearing real or false experiences appearing real.
Can be, yeah. Another one that I go to is fear is excitement without the breath. There's a lot of ways to play with fear. And a great way that's an instant alleviator is to take the breath into your belly and untie those knots. So, in having this conversation, one of the things that's important about landing on, do you really want to do this, is that it then moves you into a place where you can feel good just from having had the conversation. And you can feel that kind of lift to your heart of, I did it. And then when you can get to that place, what the other person says isn't as big of a throwing you off balance as you think it might be. Maybe, in a professional setting, you'll get a no. Instead of taking that personally, you'll already have the flutter of, wow, I did it. And then you could say, oh, well, what would be of interest to you? You won't immediately go to that shutting off your ability to play with feedback place. And it's important for the personal ones because you may be drawing a line. And you want to, allow yourself to be supported as you then stand behind it.
I've known in the past, I've had conversations where I've been the supervisor in a certain setting, and because of an employee's inability or lack of taking responsibility for their actions, I've had to terminate their employment. And that was an order given to me by, a higher up that said, okay, you're in this management role, you need to then let this individual go. And I just had sweaty palms over that. And I finally got the gentleman into the office and said, you've been given these opportunities and I've made these, things that you can do to improve your situation and your standing within the company, and you have kind of shined it on. We're going to have to let you go. And you could just see the energy drain out of this individual. And I felt the same way.
Yeah.
Because it's all over. It's done with.
At least it's complete now.
And it's complete. Handed him his final paycheck and, asked for the keys back. And
yeah, these sweaty 5-minute conversations can really be a load off of our shoulders when we're willing to have them. And that's where it comes in. Are we willing to give ourselves a little appreciation, maybe even a pat on that back that now doesn't have a huge big boulder on it for being willing to have made that move? We talk a lot about traveling in the unknown, and a big part of the unknown is growth and, being more ourselves. And sometimes that involves maybe releasing relationships, maybe moving into new ones that are so unfamiliar they're scary, and being able to a little bit more fluidly and always coming back to present in ourselves, have these kind of conversations. It's a really helpful way to approach it all.
Well, I find in the development of a friendship, to me that's exciting because it's new, it's fresh, it is unknown, and you can cultivate and put in building blocks to hopefully make it a very secure and a healthy friendship or a relationship.
Well, and a sweaty 5-minute conversation is a good way to find out if that's what it is. Because in any relationship that's going to have some amount of longevity to it, there's going to become a moment when there's some sort of disagreement or there's some sort of change that wants to be made, and maybe you're the one that has to ask for it. How do you create the safe place within yourself and between the two of you to have this conversation? And I think that what helps is to be really clear on what it is you want, and then allow the other person to have their reaction and continue a conversation from there.
Well, I have found that the 4 words that when they are linked together, all of a sudden the hair on the back of my neck, and I don't have much hair these days, but
that's because he got a haircut.
They will bristle up. And those 4 words are, we need to talk. And it's like, okay, but that is like, oh, now you're on alert.
Yeah.
And
so
all of a
what
sudden
would be,
the fences go up and the walls go
and
up.
so what's another way of asking for the conversation then?
What about?
What about?
Yeah, I would ask, is there a problem? What is the conversation going to entail?
Yeah.
Is it good news, bad news? And take it from there.
Yeah. And I like to also just say, I'd like to have a conversation with you. And let's have it right now. Or are you available for a conversation? Let's get this started and done with.
Right. And again, it's one of these things that when I heard those 4 words, especially from the ex, it's like, all right, this is not going to be good. And so for me, it's a qualifier now to say, is this good news, bad news, or is it a mixed bag of nuts?
Yeah. And also, am I already telling myself stories about what it's going to be when it's going to reveal itself, and why don't I be with my fear instead? Because it's scary. And then the stories we tell ourselves become so real and seem so powerful that all of a sudden we're believing the stories about a conversation that hasn't even happened, and that just gets sweatier, and that's why we're all turned up inside.
So it just kind of snowballs.
Yeah. Yeah, or spirals. Sometimes I feel like I have a little hurricane going on inside of me that's starting in my belly and just kind of getting more and more twisty.
Well, I recall we did an interview some time ago now with an artist friend of yours by the name of Barbara.
Right.
And we had done the drawings. And one of the things on your drawing was that cyclone.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, so that's a familiar territory for me. And maybe that was a way for me to even release some fear by bringing that out and putting it on paper.
Well, sometimes isn't it healthy just to call up a friend to say, you know what, I'm really having some struggles and I'm not looking for advice. I just need somebody to listen.
Absolutely, absolutely. And how supportive it is to say, I don't want advice. Because a lot of times we won't say anything because we don't want to hear what they're going to say, but when we can make that kind of a request, so I think that's perfect and beautiful, and that's how you know you've got a real friend.
There's, in fact, I had just used this line the other day. There's a great movie with Jack Nicholson and Tom Cruise. It's called A Few Good Men. Nicholson has a classic line, "You want the truth? You can't handle the truth." And oftentimes, aren't we ones to say we don't want to hear the truth, but we want to be heard with at least our position and our point of view?
Well, and that's our truth. So I think the truth we can handle. I think it's all these stories that we tell ourselves about what's the truth going to look and sound like, and I know what mine is, but that person isn't going to like it when I say it. And, ultimately we can't control the other person. And if we've got something that's really eating us up inside, we need to clear it up and out.
Wouldn't you say that it comes down to perception? Because perception can be one's reality.
Oh, perception is one's reality. So are you perceiving the story or what you can tell inside your heart is true for you? I had a client say to me the other day that, and she does an aspect of sales in her life that, okay, well, what she would do is when she goes to this event, she'll go and she won't in any way, shape, or form mention, this aspect of what she does. Now, when this woman talks about it, she absolutely lights up. Her eyes come alive. And it's something that when she does the yes, no, is this important to me, absolutely sets her on fire. Why wouldn't you share that with someone? How can you not share that part of who you are with someone? Everyone doesn't have to jump on your train. But gosh, when someone asks you, what do you do? Are you going to stumble all over yourself trying to deny who and what you are and what you do? So land on what you want, land on who you are, and be willing to be that. And I think it'll make the sweaty conversation go a lot smoother. And if nothing else, it'll allow it to happen and be over with.
So wouldn't that be a part of the integrity, part of the equation that we're talking about?
Absolutely, yeah. It's back to what's your yes, what's your no, what do you really want, which is a way of defining who are you. This is what's true for you. This is who you are. Always keep going back to how can I be that in every moment.
And facing your fears through that process.
Yeah. Yep, absolutely. And once you've faced it, the best way to greet it is to take that breath. And then from there, you can play with it in some ways and, all of a sudden realize, okay, I was feeling scared, but what I was scared of is not the reality of this moment.
And so sometimes we can, through that process in facing our fears, make something larger than life. And we need to come back to that word perspective, put it back into that perspective or into that container where it's much more manageable.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that the container ultimately ends up being presence. When we come back to who we really are, we take a look and, okay, the sky actually hasn't fallen yet. This conversation is something I can do. Oh, okay, I had it, and gosh, they didn't blow up into a million pieces. And I said what I wanted to say.
Well, I went through an experience recently with somebody that I know had knee replacement surgery, and they were, oh my gosh, I'm just not going to be able to get around for days and da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da. And the reality was they were up and walking the next day after surgery.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
And because they had their other knee done several years ago, and it's like, oh my, this is a whole different experience. And they had blown it way out of proportion,
right.
But the reality was they did so much better going at this route now 10 years later. And of course, technology has changed, therapies have changed, the procedure has changed, and they were able to do it a whole lot better.
And easier. Yeah, we have very active imaginations, and we're natural-born storytellers, and using that ability to torture ourselves is not really what it was given to us to be able to do.
One of my favorite movies is The Princess Bride. And it's a story being read to a young boy, and it's being read to by Peter Falk, the actor, and he's grandpa. And he makes out this larger-than-life story about these characters, and the little boy's like, I don't want to really hear it. Oh, Grandpa, is this going to be a mush? By the end of the story, Grandpa, would you come back and read that again?
Sweet.
It is, and it's like all the characters went through all these perils and trials, and eventually the two main characters who were, one was called Farm Boy at the very beginning, and what eventually became a princess, were reunited at the end of the movie, and it's a beautiful, beautiful love story.
Right. That's awesome. Well, we can tell ourselves all kinds of stories, and most important is to come back to our truth. And I know that one of the hardest things I've ever had to do was in my marriage in Hawaii, and have my sweaty 5-minute conversation maybe as many as 10 times before it was really complete. And yet, I feel like, and I felt like then, if I didn't have it, then it, not just the end of my life in the lifestyle that I knew it, but physically was really going to be over with. And when you have something that important to say, you've got to get past the stories and the fear and let it out, because we're important, and there's all sorts of possibilities in life out there for us beyond the scary 5-minute conversation that's holding us back in some ways.
And change can be positive.
Oh, yes. I mean, change is one of the fundamental laws of the universe. So, I mean, we're not going to be avoiding it other than
I think
under the ground, right?
It's an interesting statement, but the most constant thing about this world is change.
Right. Yeah, it's what's there, so we might as well make a friendly relationship with it.
So if you were to summarize what we've been talking about as we have had this destination unknown into the sweaty 5-minute conversation, how would you summarize our time together here today?
Yeah, I would say to first be sure, do you even really want to have the conversation? Sometimes it's just a matter of pacing on something. Maybe it's, if you give something enough time, it'll resolve itself. So land on, do you want to even have the conversation? Then go with what's important about this to you, what in your heart is really wanting to be expressed in this moment. And when you do that, then, speak your truth in your conversation, allow the other person to have their reaction. Maybe they will be mad. Maybe they will cry. Allow them to do that, and, stay true to whatever line it is that you're drawing. And then allow yourself to feel that flutter of support and that flutter of, I did it first, taking this thing that turned out to be really important to you and giving it life between you and whoever this conversation is being had between. And always at the end, celebrate yourself. Give yourself a pat on the back. Appreciate yourself for being willing to do something that was really scary.
Sometimes it's a matter of acknowledging that after that conversation has taken place, the weight on the shoulder has been lifted.
Yeah, allow yourself to feel that
breathe.
space. Yeah, I mean, right there is something to celebrate in.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, very good. Michelle Hubbard. And you've been watching Destination Unknown. So we're going to put away our GPS, our road maps, our compasses, our flashlights. Sometimes I can get lost in a closet with a compass and a flashlight.
Yep.
But we'll come back in another time and very, very soon with another edition of Destination Unknown. For Michelle Hubbard, I'm Bill DeFoi. This is a production of the Heritage Media Group.